from the blade. Xiaoju is a bit startled by her sudden gratitude and stutters, saying it's no big deal. She then asks Xiaoju if he's feeling better, and he replies that he's indeed feeling much better now. Meanwhile, Jin isn't too happy seeing his sister getting cozy with Xiaoju. He just stands there in silence, clearly uncomfortable. Even Yona and her bodyguard notice that Jin seems to be troubled. Diane then hopes Xiaoju recovers quickly. With that, they decide to leave. Yona waves them goodbye, and they walk away through the main door. Once Theory gone, the bodyguard is deep in thought, remarking how hard it is to believe that someone like this seemingly scrawny kid could take down a bunch of people at once. It's just unbelievable. Yona chuckles and admits she's pretty amazed herself, but she isn't sure if it's something that would even surprise a pro like the bodyguard. The bodyguard shrugs and says it's not just about the kid beating up a group of guys, because there appears to be something way deeper about our boy. The bodyguard explains that our boy quickly and quietly neutralized over 10 guards, which is no easy feat. Even a trained pro would struggle to do that without some kind of backup. What's even more mind-blowing is that he didn't kill any of them. He just made them unfit for combat. And judging by the cuts on the 2 men found in the cargo container, his knife skills are insanely advanced, especially considering those guys were retired soldiers, not just a bunch of common thugs. He wraps it up by saying that, based on Xiaoju's report and the state of those thugs, it's pretty clear that Jin Yu is a highly trained pro with a ton of combat experience. Both Xiaoju and Diane are completely blown away by this. A while later, we catch up with Diane and Jin. Diane quickly apologizes, feeling really ashamed that she always seems to need his help. Jin tells her she doesn't need to apologize at all, and that he should be the one thanking her. Diane is startled to hear this, and Jin continues, saying he understands what it feels like to have a family now. You see, it is for the first time in his life he put someone else's safety above his own without any calculations. Something he'd never experienced before coming to this country. So, he's starting to get what family really means. We then see the same woman with short black hair, and I will say it once again. She's likely Yona's sister, and she looks utterly distraught that Yona was rescued safely. The reporter details that there is suspicious rumor going around. He elaborates that while Xiaoju played a key role in the rescue, the exploits of another student who accompanied him were even more extraordinary. She asks how that's possible, and the reporter responds that even the chairman has taken an interest in this student, and we already know that this student is our boy, of course. The woman is shocked and wonders if these rumors might actually be true. We see Jin once again doing some hardcore pull-ups. As he works out, his mind flashes with images of the people he fought that day. Just as he's lost in the intensity of the exercise, Diane knocks on the door and mentions that she's brought some fruit. While Diane munches on the delicious fruit, Jin arrives and quickly asks his sister how she's feeling. She responds that she's already answered that question 1,000 times, and she's fine. Once Jin sits down, he notices something on Diane's mind, so he asks her what's up. That is when she assures him that she does not hate him just because she saw him fighting and beating those guys brutally. She claims that it doesn't change how she views him. After all, he did all this just to save her, and she won't ask him about his past either. Diane then gets somber, saying she was never able to tell Grandpa about any of the bad things that happened at school. She just wasn't ready to share it with him. But now, she feels more relaxed. As if she can open up about anything. Suddenly, her phone rings. It's Yona on the call, so she grabs the phone and heads to her room while still on the call. A while later, we see Yona sitting in front of Jin, who quickly tells him to take a seat as well. Jin sits down and asks why she wanted to see him. Yona explains that she wanted to apologize for putting Diane in such a dangerous situation. Even though she's already apologized before, she wanted to say it to him personally. She explains that Xiaoju will also come to apologize in person once he's better. She also wants to thank Jin for saving her as well. Jin makes it clear that he only went to rescue Diane, not Yona. She shrugs, saying that it doesn't change the fact that she was saved thanks to his intervention. Once she's finished, Jin asks if there's anything else she wanted to say. Yona admits that she also wanted to let him know that they will stop investigating his background. So she is hoping that he is not too mad that they tried to dig into his past. She then lets out a sigh and explains that she couldn't ignore the fact that all of his documents were forged. After a recent kidnapping attempt in America, it raised some red flags for her. She's been in many tough situations since she was little because of who she is. She says that although they never figured out the truth behind his fake records, she won't be investigating it further. Jin starts to leave, saying if there's nothing else, he'll be on his way. Yona looks startled and asks if he could spare a couple of hours because her grandpa wants to meet him and thank him in person. While Jin is heading back, he replies that there's no need for that since he wasn't there to rescue her in the first place. Yona falls silent and Jin heads home, walking down the dimly lit, gloomy alleys late at night. As he walks, we see a familiar person over that street. As the scene zooms in, we see that this is one of Mr. Cha's lackey, who has been brutally shot in the gut, and it does not take long for our boy to recognize who this man is. The man is barely holding onto his life, but makes sure to start berating Jin, blaming him for putting his gang in danger. He explains that they were already struggling after Jin exposed the Kim family. Then, their boss also helped our boy by tipping off the location of the Gozian cartel, which stirred up trouble between the Gozian cartel and their gang. Mr. Cha's turf is now under attack. His friends and lackeys have already been killed, and the Gozian cartel leader made sure to personally visit Dushik Cha. When Gozian finally faces off with Cha, he throws a verbal jab, asking why he doesn't just give up before making a fool of himself in front of his men. Cha responds with a jab of his own, pointing out that he's already sent most of the crew on a weekend off. Yet, Gozian brought his entire platoon of lackeys. Then, another guy in a coat chimes in, and tells Cha that he really shouldn't have stirred up trouble by messing with the Kim family. And when it was not enough, he tipped off Gozian and his men recently. Our gangster throws another brutal jab, and this time, Gozian himself loses his cool and he is going absolutely bonkers to what just Cha said. He furiously orders all his lackeys to charge at Cha, and the gang rushes at Cha like a pack of wild dogs, ready for a fight, but our beloved gangster isn't just any weakling. He deftly ducks, letting a punch zoom pass over his face, and retaliates with a devastating blow that leaves his attacker reeling. Another lackey tries to swing at him, but ends up taking a brutal hit right under the chin, crashing to the ground in a pool of blood. Gozian grits his teeth in frustration while Cha continues to drop lackeys as if they're mere flies. Suddenly, Cha takes a brutal jab with a stick from behind. He groans in pain but quickly recovers, throwing a punch in return that sends his assailant crashing down for the count. Even though Cha manages to take out a bunch of guys, the sheer number of lackeys is overwhelming. It's clear that despite his skill, he won't be able to take them all down like this. Our beloved gangster takes his stance, knowing he's up against copious amounts of people, and is furious that Gozian brought so many guys when he knew Cha does not have most of the men in the club. He can't help but smirk when he thinks about our boy, and wonders if he has saved his little sister by now. With the speak of the devil, Jin arrives outside the club. The lackey standing guard tell him to get lost, but Jin isn't about to take orders. He delivers a brutal kick to one of them, sending him crashing to the ground and leaving the other two speechless at Jin's audacity. He then dismounts from his bike, and the two remaining lackeys try to take a swing at him, but Jin effortlessly grabs one's hand and delivers a devastating smash to his face, leaving blood splattering everywhere. The remaining lackey tenses up at the sight and ends up taking a heavy kick to his gut. With both goons taken care of, he moves further into the club, only to find a brutal scene of dead bodies. As he advances, a group of arrogant thugs orders him to leave, but our boy remains unfazed and keeps walking toward them. One of the thugs steps up, yammering some nonsense, but my guy quickly silences him with a single blow, sending him crashing to the ground and leaving the others utterly terrified. Despite their fear, the thugs recklessly charge at him, and our boy begins to deliver blows, taking them down one after another. The scene switches back to Gangster Cha, who is now exhausted after knocking out a bunch of thugs. Gosheng is absolutely livid, unable to believe that Cha's holding his own for so long by himself. On the other hand, Gosheng's assistant feels a sense of relief that they only attacked Cha while he was alone. Otherwise, it would have been a massacre. More lackeys charge at our gangster, but he quickly takes out the one in front of him. Before he can fully move around, he receives a devastating punch to the face. Cha responds in kind, delivering a powerful punch back with equal force. At this point, Cha is barely hanging on. Even Gosheng reluctantly admits that he is a tough nut to crack and deserves praise for his efforts. However, he makes it clear that Cha looks like he's at the end of his rope and should just give up now. They'll make it worth his while. Cha spits out a mouthful of blood and asks why he should do that. Wiping the blood off his face, he decides he's going to finish what he started, no matter what. We can tell that the big cheese is not impressed by Cha's gutsy display, and the swarm of lackeys surrounding the place are visibly shaking to hear his bold statement. Suddenly, there's a commotion at the entrance with the lackeys screaming their heads off. Gosheng, bewildered, asks what the hell is going on, and why his men are screeching like dogs. They turn around, initially seeing nothing, but then they hear footsteps. Out steps Jin, and the entire crowd of lackeys is stunned to see a kid in their midst. Cha is equally shocked to see him, and quickly asks what the hell he is doing there. To which Jin casually responds that he's just there to return the motorcycle he borrowed. Well, Cha was literally not expecting to hear this kind of crap while they are surrounded by death itself. Meanwhile, Gosheng's assistant sneers once he realizes that Cha knows this kid, so he promptly orders his lackeys to take Jin down as well. The lackey proudly complies, and begins to walk toward our boy as if he is about to scold the toddler. Cha then tells them that it would be better if they just leave him alone, but the assistant insists they can't just let Jin go since he's seen everything. Cha snaps back once again, saying they should pray to God that Jin feels generous enough to let them go, not the other way around. The assistant has no clue what this stupid head is yammering about, but he soon gets a wake-up call when Jin takes down one of his guys with a single punch. Our boy then follows up with a kick that cracks another lackey's leg and a headbutt to another, sending him sprawling. One of the thugs tries to swing a bat at Jin from behind, but Jin quickly grabs his hand and delivers a brutal smash to his face, leaving him bloodied. The bat clatters to the ground. Gashing is completely blown away by Jin's display, and Cha just smirks, saying it's their fault for not listening earlier. He adds that even though Cha himself is tough, he wouldn't stand a chance against this kid. The big cheese simply commands his lackeys to take Jin down, and they quickly charge at him, but as usual, Jin effortlessly takes them down, making them look like amateurs in the process. Growing impatient, the big cheese shouts at his lackeys to stop letting a little punk beat them, but just as he's about to make another command, he suddenly falls silent when he sees Cha charging at him. At this point, Gashing is pretty sure things are about to get even messier for him. Shortly after, the big cheese and his lackeys are all on the ground, looking like they've kissed the dirt, while Cha slumps back, utterly exhausted. Jin strides over to him, and when Cha looks up, he sees the wreckage of the fight. People scattered around like discarded wrappers, with Jin standing triumphantly. Jin starts heading out, casually saying that Cha has now paid his dues. Cha is shocked and still trying to wrap his head around how this kid is so fixated on the same bullcrap after all this. He then asks if Jin saved his sister. Jin calmly replies that he did, and it's all thanks to Cha. The next scene shifts to a hospital room where one of Cha's lackeys suddenly jolts awake. As he looks around, he spots Cha on the other side of the room, all patched up, but clearly still in rough shape. The lackey is stunned to see his boss there, and Cha quickly tells him to stop calling him boss while they're in the hospital. Confused, the junior asks how his boss ended up here. Cha casually mentions he got roughed up and just took a cab to get treated. The lackey then inquires about Ghost Young and the rest of the lackeys. Cha, with a nonchalant shrug, says he took care of them all. The junior simply can't believe it and calls this BS, prompting the senior to get a bit annoyed and asks why his junior thinks he'd lie. The lackey suggests it's probably because he is too embarrassed to admit he got beaten by Ghost Young. Cha then asks if he happened to have met Jin yesterday. The junior perks up and confirms that he did indeed meet him. He further explains that he got ambushed by the enemy team while he was heading out of the club, and after getting brutally wounded, he found our boy and yelled at him. He charged at Jin out of anger, but after receiving the first hit, he fainted and doesn't remember anything else. The boss explains that Jin probably knocked him out to get him to the hospital. Cha then continues, saying that inside the club, he was overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. That's when Jin showed up. Took them all out in seconds, and then told him he paid his dues before simply walking out. The lackey finds this absolutely admirable and thinks it's really badass, to say the least. The senior agrees, acknowledging that Jin is indeed quite impressive. The lackey then asks his boss if he has any clue who this kid really is. The senior points out that Jin claims to be just an average teenager, so he figures they'll have to take his word for it. In the next scene, we see a football heading straight toward Jin, and he catches it effortlessly. The referee immediately announced it as a handball, leaving everyone on the playground absolutely shocked. His friend, visibly annoyed, reminds him that he's not supposed to grab the ball because he's not a goalkeeper. Jin is confused about why he's getting an earful, apologizes anyway. Suddenly, the bell rings, and Jin's friends call out to him, asking if he has time to hang out since today is the only day Yang-chan doesn't have lessons after school, and they're planning to do some gaming together. Jin tells them to go ahead, and that he'll meet them at the location later because he needs to walk his sister home first. His friends are a bit bewildered and ask if Hester did to babysit his sister again. Jin explains that she's not feeling well lately. Blondie decides to save a spot for Jin, and meanwhile, Diane is preparing to leave her class. She's thinking about making kimchi stew for Jin because he loved it the last time. However, she's unsure if he can handle spicy food, so she's considering making a milder soybean paste stew instead. Suddenly, she hears a buzz of excitement from the other girls in her class. They're all gathered by the window, swooning over Jin. Some find him hot, while others are hoping he'll become their boyfriend. The girls even turn to Diane and ask if her brother is dating anyone. Diane is caught off guard by their dripping enthusiasm about her brother, so she hesitates and then reluctantly says that he mentioned he's not dating anyone. As the ladies dash back over the window, Diane smiles faintly, clearly pleased that her brother is well known among the girls. Walking outside the school, she wonders why Jin doesn't have a girlfriend, and if he might not be interested in girls at all. Suddenly, she hears some voices nearby and discovers that it's Jin with his friends. Startled, she quickly tries to greet them as politely as possible. One of the more bashful lackeys blushes at her cuteness and just waves in response to her greeting. The boys decide to head off to the game room, hoping Jin will meet them there. Once they're gone, Diane asks if Jin is hanging out with his friends. He confirms that he is, but adds that he'll stop at home first. When she asks if it's because of her, Jean explains that he just left something at home. But she still insists that she can walk home on her own since it's still bright outside. However, Jean claims that he really needs to pick up something he left at home. She then points out that he doesn't need to go out of his way for her. Just like she told Yona when she offered to have security escort her. All she wants is to lead a normal life. Jean stays quiet, but agrees to her request, saying he'll do as she says. Though he suggests they still walk home together from time to time. Diane pouts, saying he worries too much. But Jean explains he's not just worried. He actually enjoys their walks. In the end, she finally agrees to keep walking with him. As they're walking, Jean suddenly stops when he spots that same woman with black hair which we suspect to be Yona's sister. Anyway, she greets Jean, but he doesn't bother to respond to her greetings. Meanwhile, Diane is just as clueless about the woman with the black hair. The woman then pretends to notice Diane for the first time, puts on an exaggeratedly concerned look and says she must be the one who went through so much because of Yona's abduction. Diane is seriously confused by now and asks who she is. The woman introduces herself as Kuzan and says she's here to thank Diane for helping Yona and offers to treat her to dinner if she has some time. Jean flatly refuses, explaining that Yona already thanked him personally. So there's no need for this stranger to go out of her way. The woman is bewildered by his bluntness but tries to continue the conversation, saying she also has a proposition that could benefit both of them. Once again, Jean firmly declines, saying he's not interested. He then just starts to walk away, leaving this arrogant woman absolutely fuming. But before he's completely out of sight, Diane makes sure to bow her head and give her one last polite nod. Meanwhile, the lady is seething with rage and her guard asks if he should bring him back forcefully. But the lady says no. It seems her ego's been bruised more than we thought and she's practically boiling over with anger. Next up, we're in the gaming room where everyone's glued to their TV screens. While they reel deeply immersed in their game, Yongchang decides it's time to take a dump. As he's heading down the hall, he accidentally bumps into a cocky punk. This guy immediately starts threatening Yongchang, barking at him to watch where he's going. Yongchang, poor guy, is practically shaking and stumbles out an apology. But Mr. Cocky isn't done. He's about to slap Yongchang across the face. Just in the nick of time, Jae-hyung bursts onto the scene and saves his friend from getting slapped. Jae-hyung strides over cockily, telling the cocky punk to get over it. Because there's no need to make a scene over a little shoulder bump. He quickly spits out the lollipop he was sucking and locks eyes with the punk and tells him to not take them for a bunch of goddamn scaredy cats. The punk's nerves are clearly rattled by Jae-hyung's deadly glare, and my guy continues to stare him down and demands this crazy punk why the hell he is staring. Once the punk is thoroughly intimidated, he finally walks off with whatever pride he has left. Jae-hyun lets out a puff of air through his nostrils, looking pretty pleased with himself. On the other hand, Yongchang still appears to be in shock, watching his friend and reflecting on the turn of events. It's a bit of a shock to him, considering Jae-hyung used to be the one bullying him, and now he's the one coming to his rescue. Orange Head tells them they better hurry, or Hyokjin will start giving them grief for being late. So, they head toward the toilet, while Yongchang still can't believe his eyes that this dude saved him. When they finally return, Hyokjin asks why taking a dump took so long. Orange Head explains there was some idiot trying to mess with Yongchang. Hyokjin's interest peaks, and he quickly asks who it was. Orange Head says the guy was wearing a Gosok Tech uniform. Blondie then turns to Yongchang, checking if he's okay. The timid fella simply replies that he's fine, because nothing had happened since Jae-hyung interrupted just in time. Orange Head decides it's time to just dive into the game. But then, a bunch of rowdy people burst into the gaming room. It's the same guy Jae-hyung bumped into earlier, and he's brought his lackeys to get revenge for the humiliation. Hyokjin is completely absorbed in his game, and doesn't notice the people standing over his left shoulder. When he finally looks up, he sees a bunch of goons towering over him, and the leader of the gang quickly tells him to step outside. Both Hyokjin and Jae-hyung realize that shit is about to get real, and Yongchang is shaking, terrified just thinking about what's coming next. Once they head outside, Yongchang is trembling with fear, feeling utterly terrified because they've gotten into this mess because of him. The cocky guy from before starts bragging about how Orange Head was all talk and no action, claiming it'll be easy to take down him and his other friend. But our Orange Head doesn't back down. He mocks the cocky guy, pointing out how he was scared and walked off quietly earlier, only to come back with his lackeys. The cocky guy doesn't appreciate the jab and gets furious. He tries to land a punch on Orange Head, but Jae-hyung quickly ducks and delivers a brutal punch to the cocky guy's face, showing him who's boss. The cocky leader staggers backward, and Yongchang, on the other hand, is practically panicking, convinced it's all his fault they were caught up in this mess. That's when Jae-hyung speaks up, telling his terrified friend that he doesn't need to feel guilty about anything because these bastards are the ones who should be sorry. Those words absolutely melt Yongchang's heart, because seeing his friend looking so badass while saying that is almost overwhelming. But then, Hikakigai chimes in, pointing out that it's the exact same line Jin used a while back, and even the way Jae-hyung said it had the same energy. He jokes that he basically copied Jin, and now he feels like he needs to bleach his eyes after seeing his copycat friend in action. Orangehead starts blushing, feeling totally embarrassed, and admits that Jin looked so cool when he said those words that they stuck in his head, and he couldn't help but repeat them. While the trio is caught up in their own back and forth, they momentarily forget they're actually facing off against a gang, and they are too distracted to pay much attention to the goons. But soon enough, the lackeys charge at them, because they are not here just to be simply ignored in the middle of the fight. The Orangehead stands his ground. As soon as one of the thugs reaches him, he delivers a powerful kick to the guy's gut, sending him stumbling backward. Another goon tries to swing at him, but Orangehead responds with a brutal whack, taking him down. Yongchang, who's not exactly a fighter, is more or less panicking in the sidelines. Unsure of what to do, Yakjin, however, is in full battle mode, taking down goons left and right. He turns to Yongchang and tells him to stay back and just watch from behind. Orangehead agrees, pointing out that while Yongchang might be a pro gamer, he is out of his element in this fight, so they have got things under control. Yongchang is completely blown away by this. He can't believe they're fighting because of him, and yet they're telling him to stay back. The goons are squirming and quivering on the ground after taking a serious beating. Our boys, on the other hand, are starting to struggle a bit, exhausted from the fight, and outnumbered. Eventually, Yakjin takes a solid hit to the gut and feels the pain. He's sure that he is screwed because the cocky guy is about to land a punch right on his face, but before the punch can connect, Yongchang jumps onto the cocky guy, grabbing him tightly like he's found his brother from another mother. They both crash to the ground, and the cocky guy starts shoving Yongchang aside. But Yongchang holds on tightly despite the fear. That's when Orangehead takes his chance and swings his leg, delivering a devastating blow to the cocky guy's head. The impact leaves Yongchang a bit teary-eyed from the sheer brutality he's just witnessed, something he's never experienced before. Orangehead stands tall, looking like a boss after giving the cocky guy the final kick. He glances at the guy who's clearly down for the count. Yakjin can't help but jab at Orangehead, noting how Yongchang had to step in to save the day. Orangehead quickly gets embarrassed and defensive, saying he was just about to take the guy down himself. They turn to Yongchang, who's on the verge of tears. Orangehead immediately asks if he's okay. The timid fella quickly reassures him that he's fine and apologizes for causing all this trouble. The scene shifts to our boy finally making